PR Connections Radio presents. This podcast is brought to you by LifeWave. Ready to elevate your wellness game? Meet X39 from LifeWave.com. This game-changing patch uses phototherapy to stimulate your skin, enhancing strength and stamina by channeling your body's innate energy. Simply apply it to harness infrared heat, naturally boosting your vitality. Want to learn more? Visit www.lifewave.com/VernD and step into a healthier, more active lifestyle today.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. Lisa Vasquez coming to you here from PR Connections Radio, Liberating Menopause. And I am very excited about this new season, this conversation that we're having, sharing tips and different ways to create a mindset as you travel through this working world. So this, of course, is for the women in the workplace. Eventually, we are going to talk about some dads tying this in because, you know, there are women who are married and do have husbands or that partner or what have you. And actually, this is the month of mental health on men. I didn't know that. And I was just learning that about, you know, dad tires and things like that. So we're going to get into that next time. But I'm excited because right now we are talking about, you know, the truth about work, womanhood, and the second half of life that no one prepares us for on the terms of in this conversation. You know, whenever you hear about coaches or anybody who's in wellness or lifestyle living and things like that, there's always the spirit that ties into this conversation. So it's mind, body, and spirit. But a lot of times, because it's so faith-based and it can be sometimes criticized, sometimes, you know, it's not wanting to be heard. I mean, and that's okay because if the voice isn't put out there and it has never been heard, once it's known, you can't unknow it, right? And so by receiving it and just being open to it, you know, is the gift of the blessing to your soul, to your inner peace, to finding yourself with, it's kind of like, a compass. We got to find that North Star. We got to climb that mountain. We have to cut through so many things in this world, especially in the working world, because every day there's a new surprise. When we come into work, we walk in and, you know, unfortunately, tempers have to be taken. Temperatures, I should say, have to be taken because, you know, yesterday she was fine, but today she might be moody. You know, boss's door is closed today. Normally it's always open. So, you know, things are happening all the time. And this is something that is always on our mindsets because we just don't know, because we walk in and we want to say hi and then she's not saying hi. And, you know, that's okay because it's your smile that really brings the joy, whether it's received or not, but you at least spread it. And that's the beauty of having that smile and giving that gift of happiness, because not everybody is. And some people are lost inside. Some people have so many thoughts on their mind. And so by bringing in, you know, our true selves, our spirit, our heart, our soul, connecting that to the mind and the body, this is how it all works together. Because honestly, you know, heaven and our Godfather, our heavenly Godfather is, you know, the master craftsman of our health. He is our General Motors. He is what created us. He is where, ever hear the term, go to the throne, not to the phone? Because most of the times we have a habit of running to the phone, right? We want to call a friend, something's happening, oh my gosh, but we never stop and go to the throne. So I personally have a seashell, you know, I mean, listen to the ocean, right? So I put that to my ear when I'm calling up the throne. You need to have this imagination of connection because it's so invisible. But yet, once you glean yourself into this conversation, you start to see differently. You have a different vision, a tunnel vision. You see things that weren't presented before and you're like in shock. You see answers come to questions and problems that you had in the past unravel with answers of why that happened. It may not happen when it's happening, but it does eventually open up and give you a glimpse of that seal. But the biggest part of all of this is making that connection, knowing that, stepping into a conversation that every woman deserves in her silence, is the power of the mindset, because we have so much noise around us and we've been so conditioned. And again, this conversation doesn't really come to, everyone. It just doesn't. So going back to my days in the hospital and working, it would be such a blessing when women would talk to me on a spiritual level, because then I could share that side. But then there would be people that, in medical, you can't really have these kind of conversations, but sometimes they just open themselves up to you. And then, you've been invited into this heart and mind that's connected to a higher place. And they want to bring that in and give you those whispers, whether it was one word they left with you that you'll remember and glow from it, or what you give to them in that conversation. When they walk away, you have sparked the spark of life into them. You may have brightened their day. You may have changed what it looked like when they first woke up. And this is the beauty of who we are and the power that we have. So when I became a health coach, oh my gosh, I didn't become a health coach till 2017. So remember, I started this career in 1980. I walked through so many, I grew up in Chicago. So for 30 years, I practiced there. And that's where I gained so much confidence in my spirit, talking with women. And these women have evolved me and brought me to higher places, where when I came West Coast, wow, things just started opening up, and the vision and the voices and being able to talk like this and know, it's a sacred conversation, because it's a silent one and mostly heard in your heart and your mind. But when you can talk about it and share the great news and spread what the kingdom is doing for you and how you are living in the kingdom on earth, because you're walking in that glow of the light, right? Because we're all salt. We're all the light of the world. God identifies us that way in the Bible, Go out, spread that salt, give out that flavor, right? And be the light of the world, because, that's what he lit us all up for. So it's all about our voice, our conversation, who we are. And, sometimes when you're sitting around thinking about how tomorrow is going to be, especially on a Sunday night, right? It's like, oh man, it's coming to that end, and here I come. And sometimes that weekend goes so fast. So today we're stepping in the conversation that, what we deserve, but how to build a career that will carry you, because there's so many companies or what have you that, you could get into something where, say a phone company, for instance. Okay, this is a good one, because I've seen it happen. There's a lot of inside work that gets done, right? There's a lot of carrying around your iPads and laptops to go make connections with the phone company and things like that. But then there's also the big struggles of the guys who have to carry those heavy ladders, and they have to climb those tall poles, and a lot of country living that has that type of wiring, because ours is all finally going underground or what have you with fiber optics. But the point being is that this was the history in the past, that these young men, when they got into those fields, there was no determination for thinking of the aging process, right? So sometimes in some of those positions, it's hard to come out, because this is all you conditioned yourself to know for 20 years, right? And now you're starting to feel it, and wow, that ladder is looking pretty heavy now, because the energy is, is not as strong as it was when you were young. It's just like, being young and working and you're saving and you're working all the overtime, and you want to get it all in now when you're young in that youth, because later on, when you're trying to do that and you're working a double shift and the time in your life has changed, there's a shift in that clock of your aging time, and things change and the energy starts to lower, and unless you're refueling, working out, getting good sleep, eating really nourished, having your morning grace, fully balancing yourself in prayer, covering yourself up with the spirit of hope and believing the protection, walking in this when you start that day, when you're doing a lot of these things, the world doesn't look so hard and rough to us. So by talking about these things, I say this because most of my life, this is part of the way I lived because I knew that source from being young. I've walked through a lot of channels and I've seen a lot of, saving graces. So here I'm going to tell you the conversation again. I talk about I was 15 when I planted my seeds, right? Seeds of becoming into radiology. I was 18 when it happened and I was accepted into the school. So thoughts create those dreams, and when we're young we have so many of those thoughts and so many dreams, right? But there's one thought that will really take you right through everything if that's the dream that you want to see evolve into something bigger than you, or whatever it is you're chasing to create that energy. So I was chasing radiology. I wanted to give. I had grown up where options were limited in my environment of what I seen. I mean, there was different services that were, the police force that was there, growing up in the neighborhoods, different things that you would look to. But then, of course, you see the hospital care and the giving of yourself for this time, for the patient, for remembering that they're sick and you're in good place to help them, so that was the choice that I wanted. And then when it started to flourish into radiology at 20 years old, now the seeds were planted. And this is where once I walked into that door, I seen things that I didn't want, and I saw the best parts that I did. So those were the things that I would thrive on and strive for, not knowing that I'm chasing dreams, not knowing that I'm creating these things from my mind. I mean, I'm young. I don't know what I'm supposed to be dreaming right now, but what I do know is that what I've seen in the past, and at this point, again, my friends and a lot of people in the neighborhood were on government help, right? I knew I didn't want to fall back and sustain myself on that because it was so limited. And I knew that if I continue this and keep growing it, I would evolve into something bigger. And, that's going to sustain me in my life and support me. And if I had the child or what have you, this would all be encompassed in that thought and that bubble and that dream. Well, then I evolved and went into this, and everything completed. As I said, now I'm retired at 65, and here I am, and I want to talk to you about how the young thoughts are overriding and trying to rule out the senior technology thoughts. So there's a conversation, I follow links and I hear stories, and I never had to feel this, and I'm sorry for the senior techs that do. So here's a community of, okay, let's talk about the clinic forms. So in our new world, this is our new world. Our new world, we are no longer really so much having a lot of health care. A lot of our care in medicine versus clinic mills, we are becoming a part of a mill. I've been hearing so many different stories of how they're getting you in and things like that. I mean, when I left the field, we had 7 minutes. I mean, that was pretty cool, but I like 10 or 13 minutes, but 7, you had to do it. So, you were on the clock. Patients were lining up. You had to roll them in, right? Well, so this is the story of a technologist who would do it in 4 minutes, right? She started at this facility. They really counted on her because she was conditioning herself. Now she's doing her mammograms in 4 minutes, and there's only 2 rooms, and I think there's 3 or 4 techs. And so you have to remember that a senior tech is going to take a little longer, and it's not so much because of the timing and her energy. It's the way she was conditioned to rise in this field of our self and healthcare, right? She knew from her history and all that, we give a lot of time. We want to hear, we're here to listen. We want to help you heal in those moments that we're with you, because whatever we say right now could either ruin your day if we hurt you with this tool that we're using, or we could make your day when you fly out of there singing like a bird because it was no pain. You had a great conversation. You went on your way. You got your coffee, and now you're headed to work, and you get to talk about, oh my gosh, I just had a mammogram and she was so cool. We talked about this, we did that. And I never had a mammogram like that. I didn't even know she was done. Sometimes I would be doing a mammogram and it'd be so funny because they say, you're done already. And it was just because we were talking through the whole thing that she didn't even notice we finished, and we were finished. So in this case, this girl, 4-minute girl, she was doing all those mammograms. And I have to say, even though it is 4 minutes, you have to understand that it's very hard to get a lot of good quality. It's very hard to get a lot of good quality because this is a real human. This is a real person. And so there's the senior tech, and she goes in there and she took her time. She took her time, the proper time. The young tech became irritated. I mean, can you imagine her pressure, her shame, her hurry up energy created so much stress that the senior tech, she actually quit. She went to go find something more calmer. She actually found a nonprofit organization, which I didn't even understand how that worked. But anyway, it was calmer for her. She was better. And this specific 4-minute girl kept going, and the rest of the other techs that were still there were they were so kind of distraught by this, that this lady left who's been there forever, and she's being pushed out because she's not going fast enough, right? I mean, she had the same dreams that young girl did. She had the correct speed going through the field, but as I said, time shifts, our clock shifts, our energy changes, we're in different phases. But that doesn't mean that we're done. It doesn't in no way mean that we're done. I mean, lucky, I had a great fortune because you really couldn't determine my age during those days, and I had pretty good vitality and energy. I mean, I really love what I do, but I did give the proper time. I made sure that, because this is a life-saving image. This is the only image in radiology that can save your life. The others can diagnose it and tell you things, but the mammogram, if it's caught, we can save lives. And that one little dot that we see that can fester into more and really come into something more, as I told you, mammography starts like the irritation of the oyster. When the sand gets in there, it gets irritated by the sand and eventually creates a pearl, right? And over time in our lives, sometimes that's our calcifications. They add up and they create. But if we catch it in the form of the sand, we are ahead of the game. It's early, we can save it, right? But sometimes that irritation does create those pearls in the breast, and we know they're toxic and they can be harmful. But it was the mammogram that found it. And I know a lot of people say, oh, I had a mammogram, they didn't find it. I didn't find it till ultrasound. And then I understand that, there's a lot of things of talking about how ultrasound is so much better than having a mammogram because it doesn't hurt. They get you in, they get you out. But honestly, the toolkit in saving lives in the form of breast cancer and helping everyone starts with the mammogram. It's a toolkit. It starts with the mammogram, and then we go into the next tool when we can. What we see on the mammogram, we see like hard copy, right? We can't tell the consistency. We don't know, is it a solid or is it fluid-filled sacs? So this is why we move you on to ultrasound. And then we're specific. There's a specific clock in the breast that we point to and say, look in this area because this is where it's being seen, right? And then we can pinpoint it, and then they can say, oh, it's solid. Oh, it's fluid-filled sacs. So then we know. But ultrasound is just like those sonic ultrasound machines that go out on boats in the water, right? They're seeing everything underwater. They're seeing everything from the lost treasures to the boots that are hanging there to, different nettings, just pollutions that are down there, what have you. But the energy of that beam is following that. And that's what happens in ultrasound. We see so much that if we don't really focus on certain things, that's how we really capture it from that. And then if ultrasound's not the correct tool because it's not really verifying what we want, we go on to the next one, and that's when we get you into MRI or recommend different studies to follow you up, different things like that. But ultrasound isn't always the choice, because if it had been, the American Cancer Society would definitely recommend do an ultrasound to find your breast cancers, but that's not what they say. They say mammograms. So that's just a little sidetrack and a little note on this, because I'm still worried about that senior tech who had to move on. And so she left to that clinic, and it's a calmer, safer space. And she didn't even know, I didn't know anything about these things existing like that, because I grew up in high capacity hospitals, growing up in Chicago. It was incredible because of the experience of what you learn and all the people that you see. And some of the young techs images, that 4-minute girl, they weren't really what we call American College of Radiology optimal imaging. And then, because again, we're talking conditioning, we're talking that, this is the new world in medicine, is those clinic mills, so according to that conditioning that she's being groomed into now, just like when I started, there was a grooming, but when I started, I had 30 minutes per patient. It could go into 40 minutes, but we had time. I mean, eight or nine, maybe 10 tops to fill in an 8-hour day. That's how much time we had. So to come down, and I know technology changed with the machines, giving us more time we don't have to stop at the dark room. We don't have to do things. So, 7 minutes is what they have today. But the optimal imaging, I mean, you can't imagine how many non-optimal films that I would see when people would bring the comparisons. This is why I loved what I do, because I knew how good I was. I know how perfect I wanted that picture to be, how much compression I wanted to give you to bring it out, because that compression is everything, right? So I couldn't be lenient on it if I really wanted to help you in your future. And there was some patients you had to be, because this is what they requested. But these are things that talking about this is that knowing where you're at and seeing how you're taking care of yourself to bring you into this moment, to know that while you're going through your life and work and things like that, checking on yourself, protecting yourself, nourishing yourself, because today we're going into caring medicine that looks like time, touch, accuracy, listening, human dignity. That's a tech who breathes with you, right? A radiologist who reads with intention, and a patient who feels seen and not processed. But today, I mean, again, growing up in Chicago, we had a lot of can companies and different, soda companies. And so you see the production, you know what it looks like. And now I'm seeing that happen to us women. And these are called the clinic mills, right? And this is what they look like. They look like a rushed room. They look like 4-minute mammograms. They look like double book schedules, cookie cutter care, it's not so much to blame any part of this moment of medicine, but, the radiologists, they have to get in what they can get in, right? Because this is a corporate thing. This is being counted on numbers. They're not counting on the conditions and the health of that. They're looking at the processing numbers. I don't know exactly how many reads a radiologist needs today, but it's big and it needs to be done. And, I watched how they transition. We had dictators, we had dictation, transcriptionist people who would listen to their tapes, transcribe, do that. But no, now because technology, they're able to do it all themselves in one shot, looking at that film, sign off the report and let it go, fax it on through that computer. And it's an instant thing. But this is what I'm saying. There is so many different, I hate to say mistakes, but, according to what is being said, that they're finding in different reports, where it's saying that you're fine, and it should have been noted this way, but it was noted as a callback, but everything else says that you're fine. So because it could have been a hurry or whatever, it hit the wrong thing, and it read out that we want to follow you up. And you're like, okay, I read the report, it says I'm fine, but now they want to follow me up on what? Where does it say that? So see, things like that are written there that, not to be careless, but again, it's a rushed situation. The billing over healing, that's a big thing. The staff burnout, that's what's happening today so much. These people, I told you these different social links for mammography, and I'm watching somebody inviting them to come join this facility. And they're saying, no, thanks. I don't want to be doing 50 mammograms a day, because this facility, I guess, does 100. And, it was pretty interesting. My biggest that I had to do working, me and another tech, were 64 patients a day, and they were in and out. I do two women patients. She'd be doing my paperwork, and then I let her go. She'd do two, and I'd be doing her paperwork, and we would have to keep switching. And this was nonstop, and there was no sitting. It was just keep on going. And this is how I was rolling out of this field. And that was like 2012. something like that, 2012. So you can see how much more we've expanded into this. But patients treat it like volume, not people. And that contrast is the heart of this message, is to show you that the tying in, the younger women are entering this world, older women are trying to survive it, right? And this is why our mindset becomes our gatekeeper. This is why, because a 20-year-old dream with mentality, but a 60-year-old dream with, her wisdom. I mean, that mentality, those thoughts, they come into all that wisdom. And that's where, you're carrying all the hope. And when you get to this part of life, you want to see that light is still lit on that side of you, because as they always say, your career isn't your identity. That's really not who you are. So you have to remember, this is an outfit you put on for the day, but you have to take it off and come back to yourself. This is what's really important, that belief. Hope is the ignition, right? Faith is that wiring that you believe in, and the mindset is the blueprint. So creating all these things is the choice of how you want to construct your inner self, right? And if you don't build your inner world with intention, the outer world, the clinic mills, the corporate mills, the stress mills will build you into something you never meant to become. And this is what I'm saying more in the medical industry, because again, this 4-minute girl, she's being conditioned now because this is how she has to roll these out. And the senior tech, for what she always knew, those practices are being dissolved in our careers. That was the part that hurt me the most, because you can't be there. It's the verse, the number for the women with, we're going to talk about the women with, in the Bible, there was a woman, and she had a blood disease for 12 years. And she was tired of that. And she knew that Jesus was going to be passing through. The crowds were roaring, that this was going to happen. And she thought to build this. She thought, if I could just touch a piece of him when he walks by, if I could just get there and touch that, she knew she could feel better. And this is when I say that we are our own doctors, and we kind of know. We know us. We know so much more than when we walk into that office, because a lot of times they don't understand us, but we know how we feel. So she knew that if she could just touch it, she could be relieved of all this stuff, right? And so she's walking toward there. And when she's walking, it's not like she had social media to have any proof of this. She didn't have any magazines to read, hey, these are miracles that are happening all the time. This was all the beginning of that faith, blind trust, and her just walking, because she just felt in her, with her thoughts, if I could just touch that, I will be healed. And true enough, she did. And when she did touch his robe, after 12 years of feeling like this, all of a sudden, now you have to remember, there's a big crowd around Jesus, right? He's hanging around. There's lots of people, they want to hear him, and they're pushing, crowds. I mean, it's crowded. But she was able to touch him, but he knew, like a spider web, right? The vibration, something had landed, something different. There was something different there. And he's like, who touched me? And his friends, the apostles, they're all hanging out saying, what, who do you think? We're all around you, everybody. And he's like, no, he knew something different was happening there. And so he knew. And so then suddenly she rose up to say, that it was her. And he called her daughter. And this is the only time you're ever going to hear that, when he said daughter. The only time he used that word for anyone in the scripture, he told her she was healed. She was healed. She actually, because of her faith, because of her thoughts, because of what she began to believe. That is where I want to take you, in knowing that who you are. And if you have a faith-based life, if you're new to coming into this, if you don't even have thoughts about it, because I told you our spirituality is being bankrupt, because, it's not being put out as strong as we would like it. It could only come out because God can't be explained. He could only be lived. you can't really say this and that because everybody has a different experience with him. And so that's how, as they say, word of mouth, right? That's how things get spread around, right? He didn't need any commercials. He doesn't need any of that. That's why, by him dying on the cross, he touched the whole world. From the underground to above ground to heaven, everybody knew him. We were all connected with that. And we all know that story. And that is that power, right? So when you can wake up in the morning, if you could just say good morning, if you could just bring that into your life on that thing, as I told you, getting up, going to the phone. We want to go to the throne. We want to get that healing. We want to have that protection. I'm not sure if you ever heard about putting on the armor, but trust me, at some point, things can get really bad. Like a magnet, and you're just attracting all this stuff that's hurting you. And when's it gonna stop? And the next time I turn this way, oh my gosh, here it comes again, or something else, whether it's financial, relationship-wise, something starts bombarding, right? But when you put these things on, you might be bombarded, but it's not going to fill your mind like that because you're in a different place. Putting that helmet on, putting the coat of armor on, really in your spirit, in your mind, armoring yourself with this fashion is the beginning basis when you wake up, when you step off that bed, when you give that first grace to heaven. The trumpets go off, and they'll go off in your heart and in your mind, and you'll feel good, even if you just stop to say hi, because you have to remember, if you could just pull up to a church and say hi, because sometimes they say that when God, does come for that judgment day, he's going to say, I don't know you. When did you stop in? I have never seen you before. So you at least want to make that connection, right? You want to get in and start growing in this field. And this is the lily of the valley, right? This is where, helping and talking and dreaming and creating happens. This is where, even though we still have to go through a lot, it doesn't protect you, but we still have to go through a lot. And so by understanding just this as the basis of starting your day, we got so much more to talk about later. And this is just the beginning, but I just want to furnish you with the beginning of how to fashion your heart, open up your mind, and bring in your spirit to strengthen and fortify you as you walk around here, because that is going to be your best protection. And always remember to try to go to the throne before the phone, because you could have the opinions of man, but they really don't mean nothing compared to what you gain when you go to the throne. So there's so much more to talk about, but the biggest thing is really that protection, strengthened with the power of your inner being. Really, as I told you, I grew up, everything was the inside. I didn't see all this. And when you go in there, nourished in that way, gosh, life just becomes so much more pleasant. And it's always going to be destructive, without a doubt, but there's going to be that graceful balance. So thank you, everyone. Liberating Menopause. I'm just so happy to bring this to you, because there's so much more for us to protect in our lives. And there's so much more to share with you on this subject of women in the workplace. So thanks to PRConnectionsRadio.com. This is Lisa Vasquez, your host, coming to you from Liberating Menopause. Thank you. Have a great week.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.